Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it? I want to know who's still with me through the storm. Drop it in the comments if you're still awake. Now, let's get into tonight's story. I've never told anyone this story. Not properly, anyway. It's been 15 years since that camping trip to Oklahoma, and I still wake up sometimes with my sheets soaked through. The sound of rain on canvas playing in my head like a death knell. Have you ever been camping in remote woodland? Not the friendly sort with caravans and shower blocks and families making Eskimo rays. I mean proper wilderness camping, where civilization feels like a distant memory and the darkness at night is so complete it seems to press against your eyeballs. It's raining tonight as I record this. I can hear it pattering against my bedroom window, and each drop makes me flinch. Rain always takes me back there. Back to Robbers Cave State Park in southeastern Oklahoma. I was 28 then, working as a wildlife photographer for a nature magazine. My editor had sent me to capture the autumn colors in the San Juan Mountains. It was meant to be a simple 3-day assignment. Take some pretty pictures of trees, document some local flora, maybe spot a white-tailed deer if I was lucky. The first day went perfectly. I arrived early, set up my tent at one of the more isolated camping areas, away from the families and tourists, and spent the day hiking through the forest, capturing the magnificent amber and crimson hues of the turning leaves. The weather forecast had mentioned a chance of rain for the following day, but nothing serious. Just a bit of drizzle. Nothing to worry about. That night, I went to sleep feeling content. My camera was full of gorgeous shots, and I was looking forward to exploring the deeper parts of the park tomorrow. I drifted off to the gentle chorus of crickets and distant owls. I woke around 2 in the morning to the first drops of rain hitting my tent. It started gently at first, a light pitter-patter that was actually rather soothing, but within minutes, it had intensified into a proper downpour. The wind had picked up too, howling through the trees and making my tent flap violently. Sleep became impossible. I lay there in my sleeping bag, listening to storm rage outside. The rain was hammering down so hard that I began to worry about the integrity of my tent. It was a good quality one, designed for adverse conditions. But this was turning into something else entirely. Around 3, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A scream. At least, I thought it was a scream. It could have been the wind through the trees, or perhaps an animal call distorted by the storm. But it sounded human. Pained. Desperate. I sat up, my heart racing. Hello. I called out, though I knew it was futile. The storm would swallow my voice before it traveled more than a few meters. I fumbled for my torch and switched it on, casting a weak circle of light around the inside of my tent. The fabric walls billowed inward with each gust of wind, making strange, shifting shadows dance across my sleeping bag. Another scream tore through the night. This time, I was certain it wasn't my imagination or the wind. It was closer, too, somewhere out in the darkness, not far from my camp. Is someone there? I shouted, louder this time. Do you need help? No answer came except for the relentless drumming of rain and another mournful howl of wind. I had to make a choice. Stay in my tent and hope whoever or whatever was out there go away, or go outside and investigate. Common sense told me to stay put. But what if someone was injured, lost in the storm? I couldn't just ignore it. With trembling hands, I pulled on my waterproof jacket and boots. I hesitated at the tent's entrance, my torch clutched tightly in one hand. The rational part of my brain was screaming at me to stay inside, but I unzipped the flap anyway and peered out into the tempest. The rain hit me like a physical force, drenching my face instantly. My torch beam cut through the darkness, but illuminated little beyond a chaotic curtain of water. The trees around my camping spot swayed dangerously in the wind, their branches twisting like arthritic fingers against the night sky. "Hello?" I called again, louder still, my voice barely audible over the storm. "Is anyone out there?" For a moment, there was nothing but the rain. Then, at the edge of my torch's beam, something moved. A figure, perhaps? It was hard to tell through the deluge, but I could have sworn I saw a human silhouette between the trees. "Hey!" I shouted, taking a step forward. "Are you all right?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it seemed to retreat further into the woods. Without thinking, I followed, squinting against the rain, my torch beam bouncing wildly as I stumbled over roots and rocks. "Wait!" I called out. "I can help you." I pushed deeper into the forest, away from the relative safety of my campsite. The trees grew thicker here, their canopies offering some shelter from the rain, but they also blocked what little moonlight there was, making the darkness more oppressive. I stopped to catch my breath and listened. The storm seemed slightly muffled under the trees, and in that brief moment of relative quiet, I heard it again, a soft, pitiful whimper coming from somewhere to my left. I turned and focused my torch in that direction. There, huddled against the base of a massive oak tree, was a man. At least, I thought it was a man. He was curled into a tight ball, his arms wrapped around his knees, his head bowed. "Sir," I approached cautiously. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" He didn't look up or acknowledge me in any way. As I drew closer, I saw that he was soaked to the skin, his clothes plastered to his thin frame. He was shivering violently. "Sir," I repeated, now just a few feet away, "let me help you back to my camp. It's not far." Slowly, as if it took enormous effort, the man raised his head. I almost dropped my torch. His face, God, his face. It was gaunt, cadaverous. The skin stretched tightly over jutting cheekbones. But it was his eyes that made my heart stutter in my chest. They were completely black. Not just the irises. The entire eye, scare and all, was an inky, lightless void. "I'm lost," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp that somehow carried over the sound of the rain. "Help me find my way." Every instinct in my body was telling me to run, but I stood frozen to the spot, unable to look away from those terrible eyes. "What happened to you?" I managed to ask, my voice little more than a croak. A smile crept across his face, revealing teeth that were too numerous and too sharp to be human. "I went too deep," he said, "into the cave. I saw things." "What cave?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew which one he meant. Robber's Cave, the park's namesake, a place with a dark history long before European settlers arrived. "They're coming," he whispered, his black eyes widening. They follow the rain. "They're hungry." A crash of thunder directly overhead made me jump. When I looked back, the man was gone. There was nothing there but the rain-soaked tree. I stood there, my torch beam shaking wildly as I swung it around, searching the darkness. Had I imagined him? Was I losing my mind? Then I saw them. Eyes. Dozens of pairs of eyes, peering out from between the trees. Black, featureless orbs that reflected no light. They surrounded me in a loose circle, watching, waiting. I ran. God help me. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life, back toward my camp. Branches whipping against my face, roots threatening to trip me with every step. I could feel them behind me, moving through the trees with inhuman speed and grace. When I reached my tent, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my car keys and my phone, leaving everything else behind. My camera equipment, my clothes, my sleeping bag, all abandoned in my desperate flight. I made it to my car, fumbling with the keys as rain pounded down on me. Just as I unlocked the door, I glanced back toward the forest. They were standing at the tree line, at least 7 of them. Their emaciated forms barely visible in the darkness, but their eyes, those terrible black eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. The man I'd encountered was among them, his grotesque smile visible even at this distance. I threw myself into the car, started the engine, and tore out of there, spraying gravel and mud as I accelerated down the narrow park road. In my rear view mirror, I thought I saw them step out onto the road, watching my retreat. But I didn't slow down to confirm. I drove straight through the night, stopping only when I was 3 counties away and the storm had finally abated. I checked into a motel and sat on the bed until dawn, jumping at every sound, unable to close my eyes for fear of seeing those black orbs staring back at me. I told the park rangers that my equipment had been stolen when I went for a night hike. They were suspicious, especially when they found my tent completely intact, but they couldn't prove anything. My editor was furious about the lost equipment, but I resigned a week later anyway. I couldn't bear the thought of ever going back into those wild places. For years afterwards, I researched Robbers Cave and its history. The local indigenous people, the Choctaw, had legends about the cave being a doorway to another world, a place where thin people with eyes like pools of night would emerge during storms to hunt. The early settlers had stories, too, of disappearances and strange sightings on rainy nights. And do you know the most terrifying part? Since that night, I can't look at my own reflection after dark, because sometimes, just for a split second when I first glance in the mirror, my eyes look different, darker. I still get the letters too. Handwritten, no return address, always delivered on rainy days. They contain just one sentence. We're still waiting for you to come back. Are you camping tonight? Is it raining where you are? If so, I'd advise you to make sure your tent is securely zipped. And whatever you do, if you hear a scream tonight, ignore it. Stay where you are, because some things that get lost in the dark should stay lost. And they're always watching, always waiting for someone to follow them too deep into the cave. Do you hear that? The rain's getting heavier now. I should go check that my doors are locked. All of them. Because on nights like these, I can feel them out there, waiting. Would you have followed that voice into the woods? Or would you have stayed safe in your tent? I wish I had made a different choice. But it's too late for me now. It's always too late when the rain comes. I used to love camping. Used to. Past tense. Now the very thought of a tent or the smell of pine needles, or even the gentle crackle of a campfire, is enough to send me spiraling into a panic attack. My therapist says I need to talk about it, to process what happened. So here I am, finally telling my story as the rain beats against my window like desperate fingers trying to get in. Do you believe in evil? Not the humankind. We're all capable of that, aren't we? But something older, something that waits in the dark corners of the world, in places where the boundary between realities has worn thin. I didn't. Not until that weekend at Robbers Cave State Park. It was meant to be a restorative trip. My husband, Daniel, had died 6 months earlier, a sudden heart attack at just 34. The grief had hollowed me out, left me a shell of my former self. My sister, Emily, suggested a camping trip as a way to reconnect with life. A change of scenery, she'd said. Fresh air, stars. It'll help, I promise. So there we were, driving down from Tulsa to southeastern Oklahoma on a Friday afternoon in late September. The weather forecast had mentioned possible showers, but nothing serious. A bit of rain never hurt anyone, Emily had said with that optimistic smile of hers. If only she'd known. We arrived at Robbers Cave State Park just as dusk was settling over the San Juan Mountains. The autumn colors were magnificent. Vibrant reds and golds catching the last rays of sunlight. We found a relatively secluded camping spot, away from the families and weekend tourists. Emily thought the isolation would be good for me. You need space to breathe, she'd said. We set up our tents, one for each of us, and built a small fire. As night fell, we sat around the flames, drinking tea from metal camping mugs. Emily tried to engage me in conversation, telling stories about her work, her boyfriend, anything to distract me from my grief. I appreciated the effort, even if I couldn't fully engage. You know, this place is quite the history, she said as the fire began to die down. Robbers Cave got its name because outlaws like Jesse James and Belle Star use a hideout here. Is that right? I murmured, watching the embers glow. But the indigenous people had stories about it long before that. Choctaw legends say the cave is a doorway to somewhere else. They avoided it, especially during storms. I looked up at her, suddenly more interested. Why during storms? Emily shrugged. Something about the rain thinning the barrier between worlds. Old stories. You know how it goes. I nodded, though something about her words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cooling night air. We should get some sleep, I said. Standing up, I'm exhausted. We extinguished the fire and retreated to our respective tents. Mine was a small one-person affair, but comfortable enough. I settled into my sleeping bag, listening to the night sounds, crickets, distant owls, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. For the first time in months, I fell asleep quickly, without the usual battle against memories and regrets. I woke some time later to the soft patter of rain on canvas. At first, it was almost soothing, a gentle rhythm that lulled me back towards sleep. But then the wind picked up, and with it came the rain, heavier now, drumming against my tent with increasing intensity. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. Still hours until dawn. The storm was worsening, the wind howling through the trees, making the branches creak and groan like old bones. I wondered if Emily was awake too. Her tent was only about 10 meters away, but in the storm, it might as well have been a mile. That's when I heard it. A voice, so faint at first that I thought I'd imagined it. A trick of the wind, perhaps. But then it came again, slightly louder. Help me. I sat up, suddenly wide awake. Emily? I called out, though I knew immediately it wasn't her voice. This was deeper. A man's voice. Please, help me. It was coming from outside, somewhere in the direction of the trees beyond our campsite. I fumbled for my torch, switched it on, and pointed it at the tent wall. The beam caught nothing but the green canvas and the shadows of raindrops streaming down it. Is someone there? I called out, tried to make my voice sound brave and authoritative despite the fear gnawing at my insides. No answer, just the rain and wind. I was about to convince myself I'd imagine it when the voice came again, clearer this time. I'm hurt. Please, help me. I hesitated, torn between concern and caution. What if someone really was injured out there? But then again, who would be wandering around these woods at 3 in the morning during a storm? Emily, I called loudly, hoping to wake my sister. Emily, wake up. No response from her tent. She was always a deep sleeper. I'd have to go check on her. I pulled on my raincoat and boots, grabbed my torch, and unzipped my tent. The rain hit me immediately, heavy and cold. Driven sideways by the wind, I ducked my head against it and hurried to Emily's tent. Em, I called, shining my torch on her tent. Emily, wake up. I unzipped her tent and peered inside. Empty. The sleeping bag was there, neatly laid out, but my sister was gone. A spike of panic shot through me. Emily, I shouted, turning in a circle, my torch beam cutting wildly through the rain. Emily, help me. The voice again, coming from the trees. It sounded different now, familiar somehow. I stumbled in that direction, my torch beam bouncing off rain-slick tree trunks and undergrowth. Emily, I called, is that you? The forest seemed to close in around me as I moved deeper into it. The canopy provided some shelter from the rain, but it also blotted out what little moonlight there was, making the darkness almost complete beyond my torch beam. Hello? I called again, my voice trembling now. Emily? A movement caught my eye. A figure standing between two large oak trees, about 20 meters ahead. My torch beam found it. A person there back to me, standing unnaturally still despite the wind and rain. Emily? I approached cautiously. Is that you? The figure slowly turned around. It wasn't Emily. It was Daniel, my husband, 6 months dead. Yet here he was, standing before me in the same clothes he'd been wearing the day he died. Daniel, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. He smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was wrong somehow. Too wide, too many teeth. Sophie, he said, and his voice was wrong too. It sounded like something else was using his vocal cords, something that didn't quite understand how they worked. I've been waiting for you. I stood frozen, my torch beam trembling on his face. His eyes, they weren't his eyes. They were black pools, like holes cut into the fabric of reality. You're not real, I managed to say, my voice breaking. You can't be real. I am. Not, Daniel said, taking a step toward me. I came back for you, through the cave. I took a step back. The cave? Robber's cave, he said, as if it should be obvious. The doorway. They showed me how to come back. He took another step forward. But I need your help to stay. I need something from you. Where's Emily? I demanded, fear giving way to anger. What have you done with my sister? Not Daniel's smile widened impossibly, stretching beyond the confines of what a human face should allow. She's helping me, like you will. From somewhere behind him came a sound that turned my blood to ice. Emily's voice, but distorted, screaming my name. Not in warning, but in agony. I ran. I didn't think. I just turned and fled back the way I'd come. Branches whipping in my face. Roots threatened to trip me with every step. Behind me, I heard not Daniel call my name, his voice transforming into something inhuman. A screeching, multi-tone sound that no human throat could produce. I burst back into our camping area, gasping for breath. Through the curtain of rain, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. Figures, at least 5 of them, standing around our tents. They looked human at first glance, but as my torch beam swept over them, I saw their too thin bodies, their elongated limbs, their faces. Oh God, their faces, with those same black, empty eyes. One of them was holding something, with a jolt of horror. I realized it was Emily's raincoat, torn and stained with something dark. They hadn't noticed me yet. I backed away slowly, trying to remember which direction the car park was. East, I thought, or was it north? In my panic, I couldn't remember. A branch snapped under my foot. The figures turned as one, their black eyes finding me in the darkness. I ran again, choosing a direction at random, hoping it would lead me to the car park or the main road or anywhere away from here. The rain was coming down in sheets now, reducing visibility to mere feet. My torch beam barely cut through it. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like hours. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but fear kept me moving. Eventually, I stumbled onto a paved surface, a road, the main park road. I realized with a surge of hope. I turned left, running down the middle of the road, praying it would lead me to my car. Behind me, I could hear them, not just footsteps, but a strange, rhythmic clicking sound that carried even over the storm. Then, like a miracle, I saw the car park ahead. Our car was where we'd left it, a dark shape against a gray curtain of rain. I fumbled in my pocket for the keys, nearly dropping them in my haste. As I reached the car, I risked a glance back. They were there, at the edge of the tree line, their thin silhouettes barely visible in the darkness. Not Daniel was at the front, his impossible smile gleaming in the night. I unlocked the car, threw myself inside, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 attempts to get the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into reverse, then drive, tires spinning on the wet tarmac before finally finding purchase. As I accelerated away, I saw them in my rear view mirror, standing in the middle of the road, watching me leave. Not Daniel raised a hand, what almost looked like a wave. I drove straight through the night, not stopping until I was back in Tulsa. The familiar streets a welcome sight in the gray dawn light. I went straight to the police station and reported Emily missing. They mounted a search, of course. Found our campsite undisturbed except for the fact that both tents had been slashed open from the inside. They found Emily's raincoat too, torn and stained with blood that DNA tests later confirmed was hers. But they never found her body. The official report says she was likely attacked by an animal, perhaps a mountain lion or a bear, and dragged off into the woods. They suggest I ran in panic and became disoriented, explaining my delusions about seeing my dead husband and strange creatures with black eyes. I know what I saw. 3 months after Emily disappeared, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a small piece of paper with just one sentence written on it. She's helping us now. Soon you will too. It was in Emily's handwriting. I moved away from Oklahoma after that. Changed my name. Cut all ties. But I know they're still out there. Waiting. Watching. Sometimes, when it rains heavily like tonight, I swear I can hear whispers coming from the darkest corners of my house. Voices that sound almost like Daniel and Emily, but not quite. Calling me, inviting me to join them. Do you hear that? The rain's getting heavier now. It reminds me of that night. Would you have run like I did? Or would you have stayed to help what looked like a loved one, even knowing something was terribly wrong? I often wonder if I could have saved Emily if I had been braver, if I had stayed. But then I remember those black eyes, that wrong smile, and I know the truth. Some doors shouldn't be opened. Some caves should stay unexplored. And when you're camping in Oklahoma and the rain starts to fall, ignore any voices calling for help in the night, no matter how familiar they sound. Because it's not your loved ones calling. It's the things wearing their faces. And they're still waiting for me. For us all. In the rain. In the dark. At Robert's Cave. I'm a park ranger. Or rather, I was a park ranger at Robbers Cave State Park in Oklahoma. 22 years on the job, and I'd seen just about everything tourists could throw at me. Lost children, campfire mishaps, the occasional bear encounter, normal stuff, things that made sense. I dealt with them all with a level head and steady hands. But I'm not there anymore. I resigned 8 months ago, and I haven't set foot in a forest since. I can't even look at trees without my hands starting to shake. My wife says I cry out in my sleep, begging someone or something to leave me alone. I don't remember these nightmares when I wake, and for that small mercy, I'm grateful. It's raining tonight. I can hear it drumming against the roof of our apartment in Oklahoma City, 3 hours and a world away from Robbers Cave. Rain always makes it worse, makes the memories sharper, makes me feel like they might find me, even here. Are you somewhere safe right now? Somewhere with locked doors and bright lights? I hope so, because what I'm about to tell you, well, let's just say there's a reason the Choctaw people avoided Robbers Cave long before white settlers arrived. It started last October. We'd had an unusually wet autumn, with heavy rainfall for weeks on end. The cave systems were partially flooded, which wasn't uncommon, but it meant we had to close certain areas of the park to visitors. I was tasked with putting up warning signs and temporary barriers around Robbers Cave itself. It was late afternoon when I arrived at the cave entrance, the sky already darkening with another approaching storm. I worked quickly, securing the plastic barriers and positioning the danger "Do not enter" signs where they couldn't be missed. As I hammered the last stake into ground, the first fat raindrops began to fall. I should have left immediately, should have returned to my truck and driven back to the ranger station. But something caught my eye, a light flickering deep inside the cave. Not a steady beam like a torch, but an uneven, dancing glow, like a candle flame. Now, my first thought was that some damn fool tourist had ignored the previous warnings and gone spelunking in a partially flooded cave. It wouldn't have been the first time, so I radioed in to let the station know I was going to check it out. Just a quick look, I told them. If anyone's in there, I'll escort them out and issue a citation. They acknowledged, telling me to be careful and to maintain radio contact. Standard procedure. I switched on my heavy-duty torch and ducked under the barrier. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against my ranger hat as I approached the cave mouth. Water was already flowing in small rivulets down the sloping entrance, disappearing into the darkness beyond. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing slightly against the stone walls. "Park ranger. Is anyone in here?" No response, but that light was still there, flickering perhaps 30 meters into the cave. I stepped inside, the air immediately changing, cooler, damper, with that distinctive limestone smell that all caves have. My torch beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the familiar rock formations near the entrance. Tourists only ever saw this first chamber, and perhaps the second. The rest of the cave system was off limits without special permits and equipment. This area is closed. I called again, advancing cautiously. "If you can hear me, please make your way to the entrance immediately." Still nothing. But as I moved deeper, I realized something strange about that flickering light. It wasn't getting any closer, despite my steady approach. It seemed to be retreating at exactly the same pace I was advancing, staying at a constant distance. I hesitated, an uneasy feeling settling in my gut. In 22 years as a ranger, I developed a pretty reliable intuition for when something wasn't right. And right now, it was screaming at me to turn around and leave, but I had a job to do. If there were people in this cave, they were in danger. The water level could rise rapidly during heavy rain, and there were sections that could be completely submerged within hours. So I pressed on, moving from the tourist-friendly first chamber into the second. The passage narrowed here, forcing me to duck my head. The sound of the rain faded, replaced by the steady drip, drip, drip of water from the cave ceiling and the gentle gurgle of it flowing across the cave floor. The flickering light was now leading me toward a narrow crevice in the far wall, an opening to the deeper, unmapped parts of the cave system, parts I had never entered, even during training exercises, parts that, officially, were deemed too dangerous and unstable for regular access. I stopped at the crevice, shining my torch through it. The beam revealed a tight passage that descended sharply before opening into what appeared to be a larger chamber beyond. The dancing light was now clearly visible in that chamber. "Hello," I called one last time, my voice sounding small and swallowed by the stone around me. "This is your final warning. The cave system is dangerous during rainfall. You need to evacuate immediately." The light flickered, almost seeming to pulse in response to my voice. And then, carried on the damp air, I heard it, a soft, melodic humming. A tune I didn't recognize, performed in a voice that was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It raised the hair on the back of my neck. Protocol said I should retreat and call for backup, but protocol assumed normal circumstances. Lost hikers, injured climbers, teenage thrill seekers. It didn't account for whatever this was, and some irrational part of me feared that if I left now, whoever was producing that light and that humming would vanish deeper into the cave system, perhaps becoming lost forever. So I squeezed through the crevice, the rough stone scraping against my uniform. The passage was tight, almost too tight for my frame, but I managed to wriggle through, emerging on a natural stone ledge that overlooked the chamber below. And there, in the center of that chamber, was the source of the light. Not a candle, as I thought, but a lantern of some kind. An old-fashioned thing made of rusted metal and clouded glass, the flame within it burning with an unnatural bluish tinge. It sat on a flat rock, illuminating the chamber with its ghostly light. But there was no one holding it. No tourist, no lost hiker, no one at all. Just a lantern burning steadily despite the damp air, despite the water that was now ankle-deep across the chamber floor. The humming, however, continued. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, reverberating off the cave walls in a way that made it impossible to pinpoint the source. "Hello," I called, my voice betraying my unease. "Who's there? Show yourself." The humming stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the gentle lapping of water. Then, from the shadows beyond the lantern's glow, came a voice. Ranger Davis. It said, using my name that wasn't displayed on my uniform, that I hadn't spoken aloud. "You've come to join us at last." A figure stepped into the blue light. At first glance, it looked like a man, tall, thin, dressed in what appeared to be old-fashioned clothing, like something from the late 1800s. But as he moved closer, I saw that something was terribly wrong with his proportions. His limbs were too long, too jointed, his fingers extended far beyond human length, and his face, his face. It was like someone had taken a human face and stretched it just enough to make it horrifying, without losing its basic humanity. But it was his eyes that froze the blood in my veins. They were completely black, like holes cut into his face, revealing an absolute darkness beyond. I stumbled backwards, nearly falling off the ledge. My torch beam swung wildly, briefly illuminating other figures lurking at the edges of the chamber, similar to the first, but each distorted in its own unique way. Limbs bent at impossible angles, torsos twisted and elongated, all with those same terrible black eyes. "What the hell are you?" I gasped, my back now pressed against the cave wall. The first figure tilted his head at an unnatural angle, regarding me with those bottomless eyes. "We are the Forgotten," he said, his voice carrying that same melodic quality as the humming, though his lips barely moved. "Those who went too deep, those who found what waits beneath." "I don't understand," I said, though some primal part of me did. Some ancient instinct recognized these things as predators, as dangers that humans have feared since we first gathered around fires to keep the darkness at bay. "You will," the thing said, taking another step toward me. Water rippled around its feet. No, not feet. I realized with horror. The lower portions of its legs simply dissolved into the water, as if it were part of it. The rain weakens the barriers, allows us to reach through, to touch your world again. "Stay back," I warned, though I had nothing to threaten it would except my torch. "I'm a federal employee. There are people who know I'm here." A sound emerged from the thing's barely moving mouth, a chilling approximation of laughter. They knew the others were here too, before they became like us. More figures were emerging from the darkness now, gathering at the edges of the lantern's blue glow. Dozens of them, each more horribly distorted than the last. Some I could barely recognize as humanoid. What others? I demanded, though I feared I already knew the answer. "The lost ones," the thing said. "The campers who vanished in storms. The hikers who strayed from trails. The curious who ignored warnings and ventured too deep." It gestured at the assembled figures with one impossibly long arm. All who heard our call. All who saw our light. My radio crackled suddenly, making me jump. "Davis, come in. What's your status?" It was Martinez from the station, her voice distorted by static, but unmistakable. I fumbled for my radio, my eyes never leaving the gathered abominations. "Martinez," I gasped into the receiver. "I need backup at Robbers Cave. Now, there's something." The first creature moved with impossible speed, crossing the chamber and ascending the ledge before I could blink. One elongated hand knocked the radio from my grasp, sending it clattering into the water below. The other seized my wrist in a grip, so cold it burned. "No one will come," it said, its face now inches from mine, those black eyes seeming to draw me in, to pull at something essential inside me. "No one ever comes in time. That is why we have endured here, forgotten by your world." I tried to pull away, but its grip was like iron. Where its fingers touched my skin, I felt a terrible coldness spreading up my arm, a numbness that went beyond physical sensation, as if it were leeching something from me that wasn't blood or heat, but something more fundamental. "What do you want from me?" I managed to ask, my voice little more than a whisper. The thing's face split in what might have been intended as a smile, revealing teeth that were too numerous and too sharp to be human. "Want? We want what we have always wanted. To be remembered, to be seen, to no longer be the forgotten ones beneath the earth." Its grip tightened and the cold spread further, reaching my shoulder, my chest. I felt something inside me beginning to change, to warp, as if my very essence were being rewritten by its touch. "Let me go," I pleaded, genuine terror in my voice now. "Please." "We cannot," it said, almost sadly. "The rain comes less frequently in these times. The barriers grow stronger. We must take what opportunities we are given." Its head tilted again, observing me as one might observe an insect under glass. You will join us, Ranger Davis. You will help us call others when the rain comes, until we are numerous enough to no longer need the rain at all. With its free hand, it reached toward my face. I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever horror was to come. And then, miracle of miracles, my radio crackled to life again from where it had fallen into the water. Davis, we're picking up some strange readings from your location. Get out of there now. The cave is flooding faster than predicted. The creature hesitated, its hand hovering inches from my face. In that moment of distraction, I did the only thing I could think of. I swung my heavy torch with all my might, connecting solidly with the side of its head. It didn't cry out or recoil in pain as a human would have. Instead, where the torch struck, its flesh seemed to dissolve like smoke dispersing in a breeze. It released my wrist, more in surprise and injury, and I seized the opportunity. I dove past it, plunging into the water below the ledge. The water was shockingly cold and already chest-deep. I struggled toward where I thought the exit crevice would be, aware of movement all around me. Those things gliding through the water with unnatural grace, reaching for me with their two long limbs. I felt fingers brush against my back, my legs, each touch leaving a burning coldness in its wake. But pure adrenaline kept me moving, fighting against the rising water and the creatures that pursued me. By some miracle, or perhaps they were simply toying with me, I found the crevice and hauled myself up. It was even tighter going back, the water now flowing more strongly into the lower chamber. But fear gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I squeezed through, scraping skin from my arms and tearing my uniform, until I tumbled out into the second chamber. I didn't look back, didn't stop to catch my breath. I ran, splashing through water that was now knee-deep, following my torch beam toward the main entrance. Behind me, I heard that melodic humming resume, echoing through the cave system. Only now I recognized the tune. It was Rain, Rain, Go Away. That simple children's song, but performed in a way that made it sound like a funeral dirge. I burst out cave into the pouring rain, gasping for breath, my legs nearly giving way beneath me. Through the curtain of water, I saw my truck where I'd left it, a beacon of normality and safety. I staggered to it, fumbled with the keys, and threw myself inside. Only then did I dare to look back at the cave entrance. They were standing there, at the very threshold, their elongated forms visible even through the rain. The first one, their leader, raised a hand in what almost seemed like a farewell gesture. Until the next rain, Ranger Davis. I heard in my mind, though none of them appeared to speak, we will be waiting. We have eternity, after all. I started the truck and drove away, tires spinning on the muddy ground. I didn't stop until I reached the ranger station, where I collapsed, babbling about creatures in the cave. They thought I'd hit my head, or been overcome by gas pockets in the deeper recesses of the cave system. No one believed my story, but they couldn't explain the marks on my wrists. 5 perfect circles of dead, gray flesh where that thing had gripped me. Marks that haven't faded in the 8 months since. Marks that grow colder and almost seem to pulse whenever it rains. I resigned a week later, moved to Oklahoma City. Tried forget, but they haven't forgotten me. I find puddles in my apartment on rainy days, even on the 5th floor, with all windows closed. Puddles arranged in deliberate patterns. Messages, perhaps, and sometimes, just as I'm falling asleep, I hear that humming again. Rain, rain, go away, coming from the darkest corner of my bedroom. They're patient, you see. They've been waiting beneath Robber's Cave for centuries. They can wait a little longer for me, until one night when the rain is heavy enough, and the barriers are thin enough, and they can reach through the darkness to reclaim what they believe is theirs. So a word of warning, if you're ever camping near Robber's Cave and it starts to rain, if you see a flickering blue light in the darkness, or hear melodic humming on the damp air, run. Run as fast and as far as you can, because they're always looking for new voices to add to their chorus, new forms to add to their collection of forgotten ones beneath. Would you have entered that cave, I wonder? Would you have followed that light like I did? Sometimes I think we're all drawn to the things that will destroy us, like moths to a flame, or rangers to a mysterious light. The rain is getting heavier now. I should go check that my doors are locked. All of them. Though I know, deep down, that locks won't keep them out when they finally decide to come for me. After all, how do you lock out something that can travel through the rain itself? Listen, can you hear that humming? I work with sound, or rather, I used to. I was an audio engineer, specializing in field recordings for nature documentaries. My job was to capture the subtle symphony of the natural world, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the gentle babble of streams, the sounds most people never truly hear. Now I don't work at all. I haven't touched my equipment in 13 months. The last time I did, well, that's why I'm finally telling this story. Maybe by sharing it, I can silence the whispers that have followed me ever since that night at Robber's Cave. Do you have headphones on right now? If so, I'd suggest taking them off, just in case. Because some sounds, once heard, can never be unheard. And some voices, once they find a way into your mind, never leave. It's raining tonight. I can hear it tapping against the windows of my apartment in Chicago, over 1,000 miles from Oklahoma. But distance doesn't matter to them. They can travel through the rain, you see, through any water. It's their conduit from their world to ours. I was working on a documentary about American folklore and local legends, the kind of project I normally avoided. I preferred pure nature recordings, not ghost stories and urban myths. But the pay was good, and I needed the work. My assignment was to capture ambient audio at locations with prominent local legends, to serve as background for the narrator's voice. Nothing complicated, just atmospheric sounds to enhance the storytelling. Robbers Cave State Park was 10th on my list. The director was particularly interested in the cave itself. Apparently, the local indigenous tribes had believed it to be a doorway to another realm, a place where thin, dark entities would emerge during storms of hunt. There were more recent stories, too, about disappearances and strange sightings, always during rainfall. I arrived at the park on a Wednesday afternoon in late September. The forecast mentioned a chance of evening showers, but nothing serious. Perfect conditions for audio recording. The approaching rain would drive birds and wildlife to shelter, creating that special hush that precedes a storm. And rain itself makes for excellent ambient audio. I checked in with a ranger station, letting them know I'd be working in and around the cave area. The ranger on duty, a young woman named Martinez, seemed hesitant when I mentioned my plans to record inside the cave itself. We don't usually allow visitors in the deeper sections, she said, studying my credentials, especially not with rain in the forecast. I assured her I'd stay in the main tourist sections, showing her my professional equipment and permits. Eventually, she relented, though not without a warning. Just stay in the marked areas, she said. And if the rain gets heavy, please exit immediately. Water levels can rise quickly in there. I promised I would be careful and set off a cave. The park was nearly empty. the camping season winding down, and most tourists deterred by the weather forecast. Perfect conditions for clean audio recording. By the time I reached the cave entrance, the sky had darkened considerably, the air thick with the promise of rain. I set up my first recording station just inside the cave mouth, a high-fidelity omnidirectional microphone connected to my digital recorder with specialized windscreens to minimize unwanted noise. I started the recording, then moved deeper into the cave to set up a second station. The air grew cooler as I ventured further in, carrying that distinctive earthy smell of limestone and damp stone. My headlamp illuminated the impressive formations, stalactites and stalagmites that had taken millennia to form, drop by patient drop. The second recording station went at the back of the main tourist chamber, positioned to capture the subtle acoustics of the deeper recesses. I was just starting the recording when the first drops of rain began to fall outside, their gentle patter echoing faintly into the cave. Perfect timing. I retreated to a spot between my two recording stations, settling down on a flat rock with my monitoring equipment. Through my headphones, I could hear both feeds, the rain growing steadily heavier at the cave entrance and profound, almost womb-like silence of the deeper chamber. I closed my eyes, focusing entirely on the audio. This was why I love my job. Few people ever truly listen to the world around them, but here I was picking up nuances that most would never notice. The different tones of water droplets hitting stone versus soil, the subtle changes in air pressure as the storm intensified, the almost imperceptible echo of distant thunder. That's when I first noticed it. A faint anomaly in the audio from the deeper chamber. Some kind of interference or distortion, like a gentle static hiss that would occasionally swell and recede. I checked my equipment, but everything seemed to be functioning perfectly. I increased the gain slightly, focusing on that strange static. As I did, it seemed to change, to organize itself into patterns that almost resembled speech. Not words exactly, but something with the cadence and rhythm of human communication. Fascinated, I pulled out my spare recorder and headphones. I wanted to investigate this strange audio phenomenon without interrupting my main recordings. I left my primary equipment running and ventured deeper into the cave, past my second recording station, toward where the tourist section ended and the restricted area began. The static grew stronger as I approached a narrow fissure in the back wall. It was barred by a metal grate with a "No Entry" sign, but the sound was definitely coming from beyond it. Through my headphones, the static was now clearly patterned, rising and falling like breath or like waves on a shore. I pressed my ear against the grate, adjusting my recorder to maximum sensitivity. And that's when I heard it clearly for the first time, a voice within the static. "Is someone listening?" It asked, the words emerging from the white noise like a face appearing in television snow. I jerked back, nearly dropping my equipment. Had I imagined it? Was my mind simply imposing order on random sound, the audio equivalent of seeing shapes in clouds? I pressed record and leaned in again. "Hello," I said, feeling foolish but professionally curious. "Is someone there?" For a long moment, there was nothing but the static. Then, unmistakably, "You hear us, at last." A chill ran down my spine despite the rational part of my brain, insisting this had to be some kind of trick. Perhaps my equipment picking up radio interference, or maybe even a prank by park staff. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. "How are you communicating through my equipment?" The static swelled, then resolved into words again. "We are the forgotten, the ones beneath. The rain, it connects us." A nervous laugh escaped me. "Right, very funny. Is this the ranger station?" Martinez, is that you? The static changed tone, becoming somehow colder, deeper. Not Rangers. Not human. Not anymore. I should have left then. Any rational person would have packed up their equipment and written the whole thing off as interference or a prank. But I was a professional sound engineer, and this was something I'd never encountered before. Something impossible. Something that demanded documentation. So instead, I set my spare recorder on a small tripod, positioned to capture whatever was coming through that grate, and stepped back to check my primary recording stations. The rain had intensified outside, a proper downpour now. My first microphone was picking up the thunderous sound of water cascading past the cave entrance. But when I checked the feed from my second station, deeper in the cave, I found something disturbing. The audio had changed. The static I'd noticed earlier now permeated the entire recording, pulsing and shifting like something alive. And beneath it, barely audible but unmistakably present, were voices. Dozens of them, whispering, crying, calling out names I couldn't quite make out. I rushed back to the second station, wondering if water had somehow reached my equipment despite the location being well above any potential flood level. But the microphone was bone dry, functioning perfectly according to all its indicators. As I stood there bewildered, my headphones still on, the static suddenly cleared, like someone tuning a radio to the perfect frequency, and a chorus of voices spoke in perfect unison. The rain is heavy enough now. We can reach through. A cold droplet hit the back of my neck. I spun around, expecting to see water seeping from the cave ceiling, but the stone above me was completely dry. Another drop hit my cheek, and another, yet there was no visible source, just drops of ice-cold water materializing out of thin air, falling upward from the cave floor rather than down from the ceiling. Through my headphones, the voices continued. Water is the door. Water is the way. We come through the rain. I watched, paralyzed with a mixture of terror and professional curiosity, as the drops began to coalesce, gathering together in midair to form a vertical pool, like a mirror made of water, hanging impossibly in the space between two stalagmites. And in that liquid mirror, I saw something, a face, if you could call it that. Humanoid in its basic structure, but wrong in every detail. The eyes too large and entirely black, the mouth too wide and filled with needle-like teeth, the skin as pale and translucent as cave fish. Do you see us now? The voices asked through my headphones, as the face in the water mirror seemed to mouth the same words. Do you hear us clearly? I nodded, unable to speak, my fingers still mechanically pressing the record button on my device. Good, said the voices, a note of satisfaction evident in their collective tone. We have been trying to reach your kind for so long. The barriers grow stronger with each passing year. Fewer and fewer can hear us. But you came with devices to amplify, to listen. Perfect. The water mirror rippled, the face moving closer to its surface, as if pressing against a barrier from the other side. We need a vessel, the voices continued, a voice in your world. Someone to call others when the rain falls, to bring them to the cave, to the door. I found my voice at last. What are you? The water mirror rippled again, the face distorting before forming. We were like you once, long ago, curious, seeking. We found the deeper chambers, the ones that go down and down, beyond measurement. We heard the voices from below. We answered. We changed. Change how? I asked, knowing I should run, but unable to tear myself away from this impossible encounter. We became more, the voices said, a hint of pride in their collective tone, less bound by flesh, less confined by time, but also hungry, always hungry for more to join us, to strengthen us, to remember us. The face pressed closer to the surface of the water mirror, its black eyes seeming to fix directly on mine. You will help us. Your devices will carry our voice beyond this cave, into homes, into minds. Those who hear us will come when it rains. They will seek the cave. They will join us. Horror washed over me as I realized what they were suggesting. I won't help you, I said, finally finding the will to step back from the water mirror. I'm leaving now, and I'm taking my equipment with me. The chorus of voices laughed, a sound like breaking glass that sent shivers down my spine. You've already helped us. You're still recording, aren't you? I looked down at the device in my hand, the record light still blinking steadily. A wave of dread washed over me. I'll delete it, I said. I'll destroy everything. Too late, the voices said with terrible certainty. Our words are captured now. Our voice has an anchor in your world. And through you, through your recordings, we will reach others. They will hear us in the static, in the white noise, in the rain. The water mirror began to bulge outward, a hand-like appendage forming and reaching toward me. Its fingers were too long, too jointed, ending in points rather than nails. That was when I finally broke free of my paralysis. I turned and ran, abandoning my equipment, my professional curiosity entirely overwhelmed by primal fear. Behind me, I heard the voices rise and that glass-breaking laughter again, followed by a sound like a wave crashing against rocks. I didn't look back. I ran through the cave, past my first recording station, out into the pouring rain. I didn't stop until I reached my car, soaked to the skin and gasping for breath. As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back toward the cave entrance. Through the curtain of rain, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing there, tall, thin silhouettes with elongated limbs and oversized heads, watching me with eyes that somehow gleamed black even in the darkness. I drove straight out of the park, not stopping until I was 3 counties away. Only then, at a brightly lit gas station with cheerful music playing over speakers, did I dare to check what remained of my equipment. Just the one handheld recorder I'd been clutching during my flight. With trembling fingers, I rewound the recording and pressed play. Static, just static, for several long minutes. I began to hope that perhaps I'd imagined the whole thing, that maybe I'd been overcome by carbon dioxide pockets in the cave, or some other rational explanation. Then, emerging from the white noise like a shark fin breaking the surface of a calm sea, came the voices. We see you listening. We're coming through the rain, through the static, through every drop of water. Listen for us. Tell others. Bring them to us when it rains. I deleted the recording immediately, smashed the device under my boot in the gas station parking lot, drove straight to the nearest electronics store and bought a new phone, afraid to use my old one in case they could somehow reach through it. That night, in a motel room 3 towns over, I canceled the documentary project. Citing a family emergency, I told them my equipment had been damaged in a fall, that all the recordings were lost. I offered to return my advance payment. They were understanding, too understanding. The project director said something that still haunts me. Don't worry about the recordings. We received your upload already. Fascinating stuff, especially the material from inside the cave. Exactly what we were looking for. But I hadn't uploaded anything. When I got home to Chicago, I found every digital device I own infected with that same strange static. My laptop, my phone, my television, even my smart refrigerator, would sometimes emit that distinctive white noise that wasn't quite white noise. And in that static, if I listen closely, though I try very hard not to, I can hear them, whispering, calling, telling me to bring others to the cave when it rains. Sometimes, on particularly rainy nights like tonight, I'll catch glimpses of them in reflective surfaces, windows, mirrors, the black screen of my television before it turns on, just for a moment, just long enough to see those black eyes watching me. They're spreading, I think, through digital networks, through water systems, through the rain itself. I hear them in the background phone calls, in the white noise between radio stations, in the hush of shower water. So let me ask you, where are you listening to this right now? Is it raining there? Can you hear anything unusual in the background? A kind of static that sounds almost like distant voices calling your name? They're patient, you see. They've been waiting beneath Robbers Cave for centuries, unable to reach very far into our world. But now they have new conduits, electronic ones, digital ones, ones that can carry their voices around the globe. And all they need is for you to listen, to really listen, until you start to hear them in the rain, in the static, in the white noise of your everyday life. Until one day, when it's raining particularly hard, you'll feel an irresistible urge to go to Oklahoma, to find a certain cave, to go deeper than the tourists go, to finally meet the voices you've been hearing all this time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never should have recorded them. Never should have given them away through. But it's too late now. They're already here. In the rain, in the static, in this very recording. Listen. Can you hear them yet? I used to be a search and rescue volunteer in southeastern Oklahoma. 8 years with a team, specializing in finding lost hikers and campers in the wilderness. I was good at it, had a kind of intuition for where people might wander, what mistakes they might make when disoriented or panicked. I found people when others couldn't, but I don't do that work anymore. Not since the incident at Robbers Cave State Park 3 years ago. The incident that no one talks about. The incident that isn't in any official records. Are you wondering if it's safe to be listening to this? It's a fair question. I've asked myself many times if sharing this story might put others at risk, but I've come to believe that silence is more dangerous. That people should know what waits in the rain at Robbers Cave. It's raining tonight. A gentle patter against my roof in this small apartment in Arizona, as far from Oklahoma as I could reasonably move. I still flinch at the sound. Still check that all my windows are tightly closed, that no stray droplets can find their way inside, because they travel through water, you see, through every drop of rain. It started with a routine call. A family of her had returned from a day hike near Robbers Cave. The parents, Michael and Rebecca Carson, both in their mid-30s, and their 2 children, Emma, AJ, and Lucas, age 6. They'd set out that morning, planning a simple loop trail that should have taken no more than 3 hours. When they hadn't returned by sunset, another hiker reported them missing. Our team was mobilized immediately. The weather forecast was concerning. Heavy rain expected overnight. The thought of a family with young children caught in those conditions added urgency to our response. I arrived at the trailhead around 8 p.m. The sky was already dark with storm clouds. The first drops of rain began to fall as we organized our search grid. I was partnered with Keith, another experienced volunteer, and assigned the northeastern quadrant, which included a section of the trail that ran close to the cave itself. By the time we set out, the rain had intensified into a steady downpour. Our headlamps cut through the darkness, illuminating the rain-slick trail ahead, the dense forest on either side. We called out regularly. Hello? Search and rescue. can you hear us? Our voices seemingly swallowed by the storm. 2 hours of searching yielded nothing. No response to our calls. No signs of disturbance off-trail. No discarded items or footprints that the rain hadn't already washed away. We checked in with base camp via radio, learning that the other teams have been equally unsuccessful. We should check the cave, I suggested to Keith as we paused to consult our map. They might have sought shelter there when the rain started. Keith looked skeptical. The main entrance is pretty far off this trail, he said, and they had kids with them. Would they really drag 2 young children that far off route? If they were desperate to get out of the rain, maybe, I replied, and there are some smaller cave openings in this area too, not as well known, but they might have stumbled upon one. He relented, and we adjusted our course toward a series of smaller cave entrances marked on our topographical map. The rain was coming down in sheets now, reducing visibility to mere feet. The forest around us seemed to shift and warp in our headlamp beams, trees looming suddenly out of the darkness, only to be swallowed again as we passed. We'd been hiking for perhaps 20 minutes when I heard it. A child's laughter, faint but distinct, cutting through the constant drum of rain. Did you hear that? I asked Keith, grabbing his arm. He shook his head, water streaming from his rain hat. Hear what? A child, laughing. I turned slowly, trying to pinpoint the direction. There, that way. I heard it again, a high, musical sound that somehow carried over the storm. It was coming from our left, away from the trail, deeper into the forest. I don't hear anything, Keith said, looking concerned. Just the rain. Trust me, I insisted. It's one of the kids. Come on. I plunged into the underbrush, not waiting for his response. He followed reluctantly, calling for me to slow down. But I couldn't. That laughter came again, slightly farther away now, and I was certain it was little Emma or Lucas, perhaps playing some game while sheltering from the rain, unaware of the danger they were in as the storm intensified. The forest grew denser as we moved away from the trail, the ground sloping gently downward. My boots slipped on the wet leaves and mud, but I pressed on, driven by that intermittent sound of childish glee. Hello, I called out. Emma? Lucas? Is that you? We're here to help. The laughter stopped abruptly. Then a child's voice. Come find me. I'm hiding. Keith had caught up to me, his expression troubled. Sarah, I swear I don't hear anything. Maybe the rain is playing tricks. Sure. I cut him off, listening intently. Hello. I called again. Where are you hiding? Can you come out so we can see you? I'm in here, the voice replied, seeming to come from somewhere ahead. In the special place, where it's dry. I forged ahead, Keith following reluctantly. The terrain grew rockier, the forest thinning out. My headlamp beam caught the dark mouth of what appeared to be a small cave opening at the base of a limestone outcropping. In here, the child's voice called from within. Hurry, before you get too wet. I approached the cave entrance cautiously. It was narrow but seemed to widen just inside, opening into what might be a larger chamber. My headlamp couldn't penetrate far enough to be sure. Hello, I called, crouching down to peer inside. Search and rescue. Is the rest of your family in there too? A giggle from the darkness, but no answer to my question. Sarah, wait, Keith said, catching up to me. Something doesn't feel right. Let's call this in before we proceed. He was right, of course. Protocol dictated that we should report finding a potential shelter and request backup before investigating further. But something about that child's voice pulled at me, awakening every protective instinct I developed in my years of rescue work. You call it in, I said, already ducking into the cave entrance. I'm just going to make sure they're okay. Damn it, Sarah, don't. But I was already squeezing through the narrow opening, leaving Keith and his protest behind. The passage widened quickly, opening into a chamber much larger than I'd expected. My headlamp revealed a space perhaps 30 feet across, the ceiling rising well above my head. The floor was surprisingly dry, protected from the rain by the rock overhead. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing slightly. "I'm here to help. Where are you?" Movement in the shadows beyond my headlamp's reach. A small figure stepped into the light, a girl around 8 years old, wearing a blue raincoat that matched the description of what Emma Carson had been wearing when last seen. "Emma?" I asked, relief washing over me. "Emma Carson? We've been looking everywhere for you. Sweetheart, where's the rest of your family?" The girl tilted her head, studying me with an intensity that seemed odd for her age. "They're deeper in," she said, "in the special place. Will you come too?" Something about her voice had changed, the playful, laughing tone replaced by something flatter, more adult. And her face, there was something not quite right about it, though I couldn't put my finger on what. "Let's wait for my partner," I suggested, suddenly uneasy. "He's right outside. Then we can all go find your parents and brother together." "He can't hear me," the girl said matter-of-factly. "Only special people can hear me in the rain. People who are meant to join us." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with my wet clothes. "What do you mean, Emma?" The girl smiled, and in that moment, I realized what had been bothering me about her appearance. Her eyes caught the light of my headlamp oddly, reflecting it back as solid black, with no distinction between pupil and iris. "I'm not Emma," she said, her smile widening beyond what seemed possible for a human face. "Emma's deeper in, with the others, becoming like us." I backed away instinctively, my heel catching on a rock. I stumbled, nearly falling, my headlamp beam swinging wildly across the cave walls. In that sweeping light, I caught glimpses of what appeared to be drawings or carvings on the stone. Crude stick figures with elongated limbs and oversized heads, arrangements of circles and lines that might have been some kind of script. "Were you?" I whispered, regaining my balance but continuing to retreat toward the entrance. The thing that wasn't Emma took a step forward, matching my retreat. "We are the forgotten ones, the left behind ones, the ones who went too deep and found what waits beneath." Her head tilted at an impossible angle. "We were alone for so long, but then the Carsons came, and now you're here too." "The Carsons?" I repeated. "Where are they? What have you done with them?" "They're changing," not Emma said, taking another step toward me. "Like we all change, like you will change. The rain makes it easier, thins the barriers between, allows us to reach through, to call special ones like you who can hear us." I fumbled for my radio, but it was gone, must have fallen during my rush through the forest. I was alone with this thing, cut off from Keith and the rest of the search team. "I need to leave now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My team is waiting for me." Not Emma shook her head, an eerily adult gesture from such a small frame. "No one is waiting. No one can hear. Only you heard our call in the rain." As if to emphasize her point, I heard Keith's voice from outside the cave, distant and growing fainter. "Sarah, where are you? Sarah." He was moving away, unaware of the cave entrance where I disappeared. "He can't find this place unless we want him to," not Emma said, her smile never faltering. "The rain hides us, protects us, brings us only the special ones." I turned and lunged to the cave entrance, desperate now. But where the narrow passage had been, there was only solid rock wall. I pressed my hands against it, disbelieving, searching for any crack or opening. "The way out isn't there anymore," not Emma said from behind me. "The only way is deeper in now, to the special place, where the others wait." I spun around, pressing my back against the stone. Let me go, please. I won't tell anyone about this place, about you. Not Emma laughed, a sound like breaking glass that echoed off the cave walls. But you already want to stay. I can see it in you. The loneliness, the emptiness, the feeling that you've never quite belonged in your world. She extended a hand toward me, and I noticed the first time that her fingers were slightly too long, the joints too numerous. We can fix that. We can make you belong. No, I said, but my voice was weaker now, because she was right. I had always felt like an outsider, even among my search and rescue team. Had always felt a strange emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. The rain called you here, not Emma continued, her voice taking on that hypnotic, musical quality again. It recognized you as one of us, and now you're home. From deep in the cave came sounds, shuffling footsteps, a man's broken sobbing, a child's whimper, the rest of the Carson family. I realized with horror, still alive, but changing, becoming whatever this thing was. Please, I whispered, though I wasn't sure anymore if I was begging to leave or to understand. What are you? Natema's smile widened again, revealing teeth that were too numerous and too sharp. We are what humans become when they stay too long in the spaces between worlds. When they hear the voices from deep and answer them. She took another step toward me. We've been in this cave for so long. Centuries. Millennia, perhaps. But we were something else before that. Something more. My headlamp flickered, the battery failing. In the momentary darkness, I thought I glimpsed what truly stood before me. Not a little girl at all, but something tall and thin and wrong. Its limbs bent at impossible angles. Its head too large and oddly shaped. Its eyes enormous black pools. Then the light stabilized, and it was just Emma again, or the thing wearing her shape. The Carsons will join us soon, she said. Their change is nearly complete. But you're special. You heard us through the rain. You found us without being led. You could become something greater than them. Something closer to what we truly are. And what is that? I asked, playing for time, desperately trying to think of a way out. The original inhabitants, not Emma said. The ones who were here before humans walked upright. Before they built cities and forgot the old ways. Before they stopped believing in what waits in the dark. Her black eyes gleamed in my headlamp light. We've been patient, waiting, gathering strength. And now, with each rain, we can reach further into your world. Call more of the special ones to us. My headlamp flickered again, longer this time. When the light returned, not Emma was inches from me. Her face tilted up to mine, those black eyes filling my vision. Join us, she whispered, her breath cold against my face. Become something more than human, something eternal. I felt a strange pull, a yearning to give in, to belong at last to something greater than myself. The loneliness that haunted me all my life could end. All I had to do was take her extended hand and follow her deeper into the cave. My fingers twitched, reaching toward hers. And then, miraculously, from outside the cave, which shouldn't have been possible through solid rock, came Keith's voice, louder now, frantic. Sarah, where are you? Answer me. The spell broke. I yanked my hand back, clarity rushing like cold water. I'm here. I screamed. Keith, I'm in a cave. Help me. Natema's face contorted with rage, her features briefly shifting into something inhuman before settling back into the appearance of a little girl. He can't hear you, she hissed. No one can hear you now. You're already part of our world. But Keith's voice came again. Sarah, keep shouting. I'm following your voice. Not Emma backed away, confusion evident on her childlike face. Impossible, she murmured. The rain should hide us. Unless... Her black eyes widened. It's stopping. And I realized she was right. The constant drum of rain on stone had diminished. The storm passing over. And somehow, that was weakening whatever power had trapped me here. Keith! I shouted again. I'm in a cave. There's something in here. Be careful. Not Emma retreated further, her form seeming to waver like heat shimmer above asphalt. You were meant to join us, she said, her voice taking on that multi-tone quality again, as if several voices were speaking in unison. The rain chose you, called you, and it will call you again. The cave wall behind me shifted, stone becoming less solid. Through it, faintly, I could see the forest outside, Keith's headlamp beam sweeping back and forth as he searched for me. This isn't over, not Emma said, continuing to back away toward the deeper darkness of the cave. We've marked you now. You'll hear us in every rainfall, feel us in every drop of water against your skin, and eventually you'll come back to us. They always do. The wall behind me dissolved completely, revealing the narrow cave entrance I'd originally come through. Keith was just outside calling my name. In here, I shouted, not taking my eyes off the retreating figure of not Emma. Keith, I'm in here. His headlamp beam found the entrance. Then his face appeared, relief evident even in the harsh light. Sarah, thank God. What happened? You disappeared, and then... We need to leave. I cut him off, already squeezing to the entrance toward him. Now, don't ask questions. Just run. To his credit, Keith didn't argue. We ran through the forest, back toward the trail, neither of us speaking until we were well away from that cave entrance. The rain had indeed stopped, the clouds breaking up to reveal a waning moon. What happened back there? Keith finally asked as we paused to catch our breath on the main trail. Who were you talking to? I couldn't see anyone else in the cave. I opened my mouth to tell him everything, then stopped. He hadn't seen not Emma, hadn't heard her voice. Would he believe me, or would he think the stress of the search had caused me to hallucinate? I got disoriented. I said at last, thought I heard one of the Carson children. Must have been the wind or the rain playing tricks. I forced a weak smile. Sorry for scaring you. Keith looked skeptical but didn't press the issue. We radioed in our position and continued the search, eventually rejoining the other teams at base camp as dawn broke. The Carsons were never found. The official report lists them as missing, presumed dead, likely victims of flash flooding in the cave system. But I know the truth. They're still there, still changing, becoming part of whatever ancient horror dwells beneath Robbers Cave. I quit the search and rescue team a week later, moved to Arizona, where it rarely rains. But it doesn't matter how far I run. They were right about one thing. They marked me somehow. I hear them now, in every rainfall, whispering, calling, promising that I'll still become one of them. And sometimes when I catch my reflection in water, a puddle, a glass, even my own tears, I see her there. Not Emma, watching me with those black eyes, waiting. They're patient, you see, the children of the rain. They've been waiting centuries for the barriers to thin enough for them to return to our world. What's a few more years to them? A few more decades? So consider this a warning. If you're ever camping near Robbers Cave and it starts to rain, be careful what voices you listen for in the storm. Be careful what childish laughter you might follow into the forest. And if a little girl with eyes like black pools offers to show you a special place deeper in the cave, run. Run as fast and as far as you can, because they're still there, still waiting, still calling special ones through the rain. Would you have taken her hand, I wonder? Would you have followed her deeper into the darkness, if it meant never being lonely again? Some nights, when the rain is particularly heavy and their voices particularly clear, I still think about going back, about finally accepting their offer, about becoming something more than human. And maybe someday I will. The rain is stopping now, but always returns, doesn't it? And so will they, again and again, until we all answer their call. I've spent my life capturing things that others miss. The perfect light striking a mountain at dawn. The exact moment a hummingbird's wings pause in flight. The fleeting expressions that cross a person's face when they think no one is watching. I'm a photographer, or was before what happened at Robbers Cave. Now I don't pick up cameras anymore. Can't bear to look through a viewfinder. Can't stand the thought of what might be captured in the background of my shots. Just out of focus, watching me with those black, endless eyes. It's raining tonight. I can hear it pattering against the windows of my home in Portland. Over 1,500 miles from Oklahoma, I've sealed all the drains in my house. I drink only bottled water. I take quick showers, never baths, and I keep my eyes closed the entire time because they can reach through water, you see, any water. And once they've found you through a lens, once you've captured them on film, they never lose sight of you again. Are you sitting somewhere safe and dry as you listen to this? I hope so. But even that may not be enough protection. Not if you've ever been to Robbers Cave. Not if they've already noticed you. It was meant to be a straightforward assignment. A travel magazine was doing a feature on America's most haunted hiking trails, and I was commissioned to capture atmospheric shots of Robbers Cave State Park in southeastern Oklahoma. I'd photographed similar locations before: abandoned prisons, supposedly haunted hotels, ancient burial grounds. I didn't believe in any of it, of course. I was just there for the moody lighting and dramatic landscapes. I arrived at the park on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. The autumn colors were at their peak, vibrant oranges and reds, painting the Sambois Mountains in fire. The weather forecast mentioned possible showers overnight, but the sky was clear for now, perfect for golden hour photography. I checked in at the ranger station, where a middle-aged ranger named Davis gave me a map and some standard warnings about staying on marked trails. He seemed tense, distracted, his eyes constantly darting to the windows as dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. "Planning to shoot the cave itself?" he asked. His tone casual, but his knuckles white where he gripped his coffee mug. "That's the main attraction, isn't it?" I replied, "I'll probably head there around sunset for some dramatic lighting shots. Then again tomorrow morning." Something flickered across his face. Concern, perhaps, or fear. "Just don't go past the marked viewing areas, especially if it starts raining. The deeper sections can flood quickly." I assured him I'd be careful and headed out to scout locations. I spent the afternoon capturing the landscape. Ancient trees with twisted limbs, moss-covered rock formations, the play of dappled sunlight through the forest canopy. As the sun began its descent, I made my way toward Robbers Cave itself. The cave entrance was impressive. A yawning mouth in the limestone hillside, surrounded by gnarled trees that seemed to be keeping watch. Perfect for the moody atmosphere the magazine wanted. I set up my tripod and began shooting, experimenting with different angles and exposures. As I worked, the first drops of rain began to fall earlier than forecast. I quickly covered my equipment with a waterproof tarp and ducked under the cave's entrance overhang for shelter. The rain intensified rapidly, becoming a proper downpour within minutes. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the interior of the cave beyond the tourist area. And that's when I saw it, just for an instant, in that electric blue flash. A figure, standing deep in the cave where the tourist path ended. Tall, unnaturally thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. I blinked, and in the returning darkness, it was gone. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the lightning, the shadow cast by some rock formation. But my photographer's instinct, the same one that had helped me capture award-winning shots throughout my career, whispered that I had just glimpsed something extraordinary. I switched on my headlamp and peered deeper into the cave. The tourist section was well maintained, with a clear path and informational plaques about the cave's geology and history. Beyond that, a metal grate with a no entry sign blocked access to the deeper caverns. The figure, if it had been real, had been standing just beyond that grate. I hesitated, listening to the rain hammering down outside. I should wait out the storm, then pack up and return to my cabin. That would be the sensible thing to do. Instead, I found myself reaching for my camera bag, pulling out my best low-light equipment. If there was something unusual in this cave, something that appeared during storms, as local legend suggested, what photographer wouldn't want to capture it? I approached the metal grate, shining my headlamp through the bars. The passage beyond narrowed briefly before opening into what appeared to be a larger chamber. Water was beginning to trickle along the cave floor, flowing deeper into the system. The grate, I discovered, wasn't locked. The simple latch had rusted, making it appear secured at first glance, but firm push was all it took to swing it open with a protesting creak. I hesitated at this unexpected, easy access. Was I really going to ignore multiple warnings and venture into an unmaintained cave system during a storm? The answer, apparently, was yes. I ducked through the opening, justifying it to myself as professional curiosity. I'd just take a few quick shots of the untouched caverns, something exclusive that other photographers wouldn't have. I wouldn't go far, and I'd leave at the first sign of the water level rising. The passage beyond the grate was narrow, forcing me to crouch and edge sideways in places. My headlamp illuminated stunning limestone formations untouched by tourist traffic, pristine stalactites and stalagmites, delicate crystal structures that glittered in my light beam. I stopped frequently to capture these hidden wonders, each shot better than the last. The passage eventually opened into a larger chamber, just as I had glimpsed from outside the grate. It was breathtaking. A cathedral-like space with ceiling that soared beyond the reach of my headlamp. Water trickled down the walls, catching the light in mesmerizing patterns. I set up my tripod and began taking long exposure shots, capturing the ethereal quality of the space. As I worked, I became aware of a strange acoustic property of the chamber. The sound of the rain outside, which should have been muffled by the layers of rock between, seemed to be amplified instead. It was as if the entire cave was designed to channel the sound of falling water, focusing it in this space. And within that rain sound was something else, a subtle rhythm that almost resembled speech. Not words exactly, but patterns that suggested communication, like Morse code tapped out in water droplets. I found myself lowering my camera, standing perfectly still, just listening. There was something hypnotic about that near speech, something that made me want to understand what it was saying. I closed my eyes, concentrating, trying to discern meaning from the patterns. Beautiful, isn't it? I nearly jumped out of my skin at the sound of a human voice. My eyes flew open, my headlamp beam swinging wildly until it landed on a figure standing near one of the chamber's many exits. A man, tall and lean, dressed in what appeared to be old-fashioned hiking gear. "Sorry to startle you," he said, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't quite place. Something antiquated, like from an old film. Don't get many visitors in this section, especially during a storm. "I'm a photographer," I explained, gesturing to my camera. "Just getting some shots for a magazine article. I didn't realize anyone else was down here." The man smiled, though something about the expression seemed unpracticed, as if he was copying a gesture he'd seen, but didn't fully understand. "Oh, I know these caves better than anyone. I've been exploring them for, well, a very long time." He stepped closer, into the full illumination of my headlamp, and I had to suppress a gasp. His face was gaunt, almost skeletal, with deep-set eyes that caught the light oddly. He was paler than seemed natural, with a slightly translucent quality to his skin that reminded me of cavefish or other creatures that evolve in darkness. "Are you a park ranger?" I asked, though I already knew he wasn't. His clothing was wrong. Not just old-fashioned, but genuinely old. The fabric worn in a way that suggested decades of use. He laughed, a sound like water droplets falling into a deep pool. "No, nothing so official. Just a fellow who found his way in long ago and never quite found his way out again." He tilted his head, studying me with unnerving intensity. "You hear it, don't you? The speech in the rainfall." I hesitated, then nodded. There was no point denying it. I had clearly been listening for something when he appeared. "Most can't," he said, his voice taking on an eager quality. "Most just hear rain. But some special ones, they can hear the voices. The ones from below." "Below?" I echoed, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. "Deeper in the cave system," he explained, gesturing toward one of the dark passages leading out of the chamber, "where the really interesting formations are, the ones worth photographing." His smile widened slightly. "I could show you if you like, since you came all this way for unique shots." Every instinct was telling me to decline, to pack up my equipment and retreat to the safety of the tourist section. But that photographer's curiosity, the same impulse that led me to crawl through jungle undergrowth to photograph rare orchids, or hang from helicopter skids to capture aerial shots of volcanoes, whispered that this might be the opportunity of a lifetime. "How much further?" I asked, already beginning to collapse my tripod. "Not far," he assured me. "Just through this passage here. Mind your step. The water's rising a bit with the rain." He was right about that. I hadn't noticed. But the trickle along the cave floor had become a steady stream several inches deep, flowing toward the passage he was indicating. I followed him, camera bag slung over my shoulder, tripod in hand. The passage was wider than the one I'd come through, allowing us to walk upright, though I had to watch my footing on the slippery, water-covered stone. "Been a photographer long?" he asked conversationally as we walked. "About 20 years professionally," I replied. "You mentioned you've been exploring these caves for a while?" He chuckled, that same liquid sound. "Oh, yes. Lost track of the exact time. The days blend together down here, but I've seen things most never will. Things that defy conventional understanding." "Like what?" I prompted. He glanced back at me, and for just a moment, in the shifting light of my headlamp, his eyes seemed to be entirely black. Not just the irises, but the whites as well, like holes cut into his face. Then he blinked, and they appeared normal again. "Like the carvings up ahead," he said smoothly. "Ancient stuff. Predates European settlement by millennia. Predates the indigenous tribes too, if truth be told. No one knows who made them." The passage widened further, opening into another chamber, smaller than the last, but still impressive. The sound of rain was even stronger here, though we must have been hundreds of feet from the entrance by now. And on the walls, illuminated by my headlamp, were the carvings he'd mentioned. They were unlike anything I'd seen in other cave systems. Not the simple pictograph of animals or hunting scenes typical of ancient cave art. These were intricate, mathematical patterns that seemed to pulse and shift if I looked at them too long. Interspersed among the patterns were figures, tall, thin beings with elongated limbs and oversized heads, depicted in poses that suggested they were emerging from pools of water. "Extraordinary," I breathed, already raising my camera. "How is this not widely documented?" "Oh, the park authorities know about it," my guide said dismissively. "They just don't advertise it. Too difficult to explain. Too unsettling for most visitors." He gestured to a particularly complex section of carving, They depict the original inhabitants of this region, the ones who were here long before humans arrived. You mean Native American tribes? I asked, though I knew that wasn't what he meant. He smiled again, that same unpracticed expression. Much older, the ones who taught humans to speak, to make fire, to build, the ones humans eventually forgot, except in their oldest stories about what lurks in dark places. I focused my camera on the carvings, taking careful shots from multiple angles. As I worked, I became aware that the water level in the chamber was rising more rapidly now, already covering my boots, flowing steadily from some unseen source deeper in the cave system. We should probably head back soon, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. The water is getting higher. Just a few more chambers, my guide urged. The truly remarkable formations are just ahead, the ones no one ever photographs. Don't you want to be the first to capture something truly unique? Again, that photographer's ambition warred with my growing sense of alarm. How much deeper? I'm concerned about the water level. The water is our friend, he said, wading deeper into the chamber, toward another exit passage. The water was now halfway up his calves, but he seemed unconcerned. It's what allows the special ones like you to see and hear what remains hidden from others. Without the rain, the barriers between worlds would be too thick. What do you mean, between worlds? I asked, but he was already moving into the next passage, leaving me to follow or be left alone in the dimly lit chamber. I followed. The next chamber was smaller still, but with a ceiling that soared upward into darkness beyond the reach of my headlamp. The walls here were covered not with carvings, but with strange, glistening substance that caught the light in rainbow patterns. The water was deeper too, nearly knee-high and rising visibly. We really should turn back, I insisted, my camera forgotten now a concern for my safety overrode professional curiosity. My guide turned to face me fully, and this time there was no mistaking the unnatural blackness of his eyes. But we finally reached the place I wanted to show you, he said, his voice changing, becoming deeper, resonating oddly in the chamber. The place where the barrier is thinnest, where the lens between worlds can be breached. I backed away, my heart pounding. Who are you? Where are you? His smile widened impossibly, revealing teeth that were too numerous and too sharp for a human mouth. We were called many things in the old days. Gods, demons, the hidden folk. Now we're mostly forgotten, except in children's stories about monsters under bed or creatures in closet. He spread his arms, and they seemed longer than before, the joints wrong, the fingers tapering to points rather than ending in proper nails. We are the original inhabitants, the ones who were here first, the ones who were treated beneath when humanity began to spread. The water was rising faster now, swirling around my thighs. I turned to flee back the way we'd come, but the passage was gone, replaced by a solid rock wall where an opening had been moments before. Don't be afraid, my guide said, his voice now accompanied by others, whispers and murmurs that seemed to come from the water itself. We've been watching you through your own lens for some time. Every photograph you've taken here has captured a piece of us in the background. Every frame contains our eyes, watching, waiting. With trembling hands, I raised my camera and flipped through the preview screen, examining the shots I had taken. At first, I saw nothing unusual, but as I looked closer, I noticed them. Indistinct figures at the edges of frames, black eyes peering from shadows, elongated limbs just barely visible in the darkness beyond my primary subjects. They had been there all along, in every shot, watching me through my own camera. The camera is a doorway, my guide explained, drawing closer, the water parting around him as if reluctant to touch him, a lens between worlds. It captures more than light. It captures essence, reality. And when the barriers are thin, as there during rainfall. What is captured can reciprocate. I backed away until my shoulders hit the stone wall. What do you want from me? To join us, he said simply. To add your perspective to our collective. To see as we see. To help us reach others through their lenses, their screens, their reflective surfaces. He extended one too long hand toward me. You have a gift for seeing what others miss. For capturing the hidden truth of things. With us, you could do so much more. The water was at my waist now, ice cold and rising steadily. Yet my guide stood dry. The water flowed around him, as if he existed in a different physical plane. I need to leave, I said, my voice breaking with fear. People know I'm here. They'll come looking. They won't find you, he assured me, continuing his advance. Just as they never found the others who heard our call in the rain, who saw us through their lenses. His head tilted at an unnatural angle. But don't worry, you won't be gone. A version of you will return, carrying your camera, taking pictures, living your life, just with additional perspective. I raised my camera like a shield, as if its familiar weight could protect me from this nightmare. In desperate panic, I pressed the shutter button, the flash illuminating the chamber in harsh white light. In that frozen moment of illumination, I saw them all, dozens of figures like my guide, some more human in appearance, others barely recognizable as humanoid, all with those same black, empty eyes. They lined the walls of the chamber, emerging from the stone itself, reaching toward me with two long limbs. The flash seemed to disorient them momentarily. My guide hissed, raising an arm to shield his face, a reflexive, almost human gesture at odds with his increasingly inhuman appearance. It was my only chance. I lunged past him, toward where I thought the exit passage had been, half swimming through the rising water. My hand found an opening, not the passage we'd entered through, but a different one, narrower and rough-edged as if recently formed. I squeezed through without hesitation, scraping my shoulders against the sharp stone. My camera bag caught momentarily before I yanked it free. Behind me, I heard that liquid laughter again, now joined by many voices. Run, photographer. My guide called, his voice echoing through the passage. But remember, every drop of water is our eye. Every lens is our window. And you've carried us back with you in every frame you capture. The passage sloped upward, the water level dropping as I climbed. I scrambled desperately, driven by pure animal panic, no longer caring about direction as long as it was away from those things in the chamber below. After what seemed like hours, but was probably minutes, I emerged into a larger tunnel that I recognized with overwhelming relief, the main tourist path. Somehow, the narrow escape passage had connected to a different part of the cave system. I staggered toward the entrance, toward daylight and safety, not slowing until I burst out into the open air. The rain had stopped, the storm passed, the late afternoon sun breaking through the clouds. I didn't stop to pack up properly. I threw my equipment into my car and drove straight out of the park, not stopping until I was 3 counties away and the sun had set. That night, in a roadside motel with the lights blazing and the drains plugged with towels, I finally dared to look through the photos I'd taken. Most were, as I remembered, beautiful shots of the cave interior, the unusual formations, the ancient carvings. But in the background of every image, partially obscured by shadow or just out of focus, were the figures. Some resembled my guide, others were more distorted, barely humanoid. All had those same black, empty eyes, staring directly into the camera, directly at me. And the last shot, the desperate one I'd taken when the flash temporarily disoriented them, showed something worse. In that harsh, direct illumination, I could see that the chamber wasn't a natural cave formation at all. It was lined with bodies, human bodies, fused into the stone walls, their faces frozen in expressions of terror or ecstasy. Their eye sockets empty and black. I deleted every image, formatted my memory cards. Later, I would destroy the camera itself, smashing it to pieces and burying the fragments in different locations. But it was too late. They had already found their way through my lens, into my world. I see them now whenever it rains, reflected in puddles, in the droplets on my shower door, in the condensation on a cold glass, those black, empty eyes watching, waiting. Sometimes, when I look at photographs taken by others, even those that have nothing to do with Robbers Cave, I glimpse them in the background, a tall, thin figure just out of focus, an elongated hand at the edge of the frame, those unmistakable black eyes peering from shadows. They're spreading, using cameras and screens and any reflective surface as doorways, reaching through when the barriers are thin, when it rains, when someone is watching or being watched through a lens. So, let me ask you, have you ever noticed something strange in the background of your photos? A figure that shouldn't be there? Eyes where there should be only darkness? Check your recent pictures. Look closely at the shadows, the blurry areas, the parts you normally ignore, because they're looking back at you. They've always been looking back. And once they've seen you through a lens, they never lose sight of you again. The rain is getting heavier now. I should go check that my curtains are drawn, that my mirrors are covered, that all my screens are turned off. Would you have followed him deeper into the cave? I wonder, would your photographers I have led you into the darkness, seeking that perfect, unique shot that no one else has captured? I did, and now they've captured me. In every drop of rain, in every reflection, in every lens that catches my image. They're watching me now as I tell you this story. And I fear they're watching you too, through whatever screen or speakers carry my voice to you. Look away. Look away now, before they notice you too. But I suspect it's already too late. I study water for a living, or at least I used to before Robbers Cave. I was a hydrologist specializing in underground water systems, aquifers, subterranean rivers, cave formations created by water over millennia. I spent my career measuring, analyzing, and documenting the hidden flows that shape our world from beneath. Now I can't even look at a glass of water without seeing faces in it, without hearing those whispers that rise and fall like distant tides, without remembering what I found beneath Robbers Cave State Park. And what found me? It's raining tonight. I can hear it drumming against the roof of my house in northern Minnesota, as far from Oklahoma as I could reasonably move. I've installed special filters on all my pipes. I collect rainwater in sealed containers and test it obsessively for changes, anomalies, signs of them. Because water remembers, you see. It carries information, patterns, memories. And once it's touched something from their world, it's never quite the same again. It becomes a conduit, a doorway, a voice. Are you drinking something as you listen to this? Tea, perhaps? Coffee? Water? I'd set it aside if I were you, just until I finish my story, just to be safe. I came to Robbers Cave as part of a research project studying the impact of increased rainfall on cave systems in the southern United States. Climate change had altered precipitation patterns, and we were documenting how underground water networks were responding, new channels forming, old passages flooding, the accelerated creation of speleothems due to increased mineral-laden water flow. Robbers Cave wasn't actually my first choice for the study. Its cave system is relatively small compared to others in the region, but there have been reports of unusual hydrological activity there. Water appearing in previously dry chambers, unexpected flooding during moderate rainfall, strange acoustic properties in certain caverns that seem to amplify the sound of water. Plus, the park ranger I spoke with, a nervous man named Davis, was surprisingly eager to have a hydrologist examine the cave system. Something's changed down there, he told me during our preliminary call. The water doesn't flow like it used to. Doesn't sound like it used to either. I arrived at the park on a Wednesday morning in mid-October. The forecast predicted 3 days of steady rain starting that evening. Perfect conditions for my research. I spent the day setting up monitoring equipment at the cave entrance and in the main tourist chambers, placing flow meters, water level gauges, and acoustic recording devices to capture the data I needed. Ranger Davis accompanied me, seemingly anxious to stay within the well-traveled sections of cave. When I mentioned my plans to explore the deeper, restricted areas the following day, his face tightened. Those sections are off-limit for a reason, he said. Unstable, prone to flooding. I can't authorize that. I have permits from the Department of Natural Resources, I countered, showing him my paperwork. My research requires access to the entire system. I'm well equipped for technical caving, and I'll take all necessary precautions. He looked like he wanted to argue further, but merely nodded, his eyes darting toward the darkening sky visible through the cave entrance. Just don't go during heavy rainfall, and maintain radio contact at all times. I agreed, though I didn't mention that rainfall was precisely when I needed to observe the system in action. What hydrologist studies water flow during drought. By evening, I had my surface equipment established and had returned to my cabin to analyze preliminary data and prepare for the next day's deeper exploration. The rain began just after sunset, a gentle patter that quickly intensified into a steady downpour. I sat at my laptop, reviewing topographical maps of the cave system, marking the locations where I planned to place additional monitoring devices. According to the official surveys, Robbers Cave extended about half a mile into the hillside, with several chambers and passages branching off from the main route. But there were notations indicating unexplored sections, places where passages narrowed too much for easy exploration, or where potential new chambers had been detected by acoustic testing but never physically entered. These were the areas of most interest to me. The unknown reaches where water might be carving new paths or revealing previously hidden aspects of the system. As I worked, I became aware of a slight change in the sound of the rain outside. Rather than the random pattered droplets, there seemed to be a rhythm emerging. Not a regular beat, but something more complex, like a subtle Morse code or the cadence of speech in a language I didn't understand. I found myself pausing, listening more intently. The pattern was definitely there, just at the edge of comprehension, almost like the rain was trying to communicate. I shook my head, smiling at my own fancy. The human brain is wired to find patterns, even in random noise. But still, I found it hard to concentrate on my work with that near speech continuing outside. I decided to make a preliminary visit to the cave to check on my equipment and see how it was functioning in the actual rainfall. I donned my rain gear, packed a small equipment bag, and headed out into the storm. The short hike to the cave entrance was challenging in the darkness and rain. My headlamp cut through the downpour, illuminating the trail in a narrow cone of light. All around me, the forest seemed to shift and flow, the rain transforming the familiar landscape into something more fluid and less certain. The rhythm in the rainfall was stronger now that I was outside, more defined. I found myself pausing occasionally, head tilted, trying to decipher what felt tantalizingly close to language. I reached the cave entrance, relieved to step out of the direct downpour. My first monitoring station was functioning perfectly, recording the rate of water flowing into the cave from outside. I moved deeper, checking each station in turn, making minor adjustments based on the actual conditions. Everything was working as expected, the data flowing in exactly as I'd hoped. Yet something felt off. The deeper I went into the cave, the more I noticed a discrepancy between what my instruments were recording and what my senses were telling me. The flow meter showed normal water volumes for the amount of rainfall, but the cave seemed wetter than it should be, with water seeping from cracks in the ceiling and walls where there should have been none, forming small rivulets that converged and flowed deeper into the system. And the sound, the acoustic monitors were picking up the expected sound of water dripping and flowing, but to my ears, there was that same rhythmic quality I noticed in the rain outside, more pronounced now, echoing to the chambers in patterns that made me think of chanting or singing. I followed the main tourist path to its end, where a metal grate blocked access to restricted sections beyond. Water was flowing through it, disappearing into the darkness. According to my data, this was normal during rainfall, but standing there, watching the water move, it didn't look normal. It seemed almost purposeful, as if the water was being drawn deeper, rather than simply flowing downhill. My scientific curiosity overpowered my growing unease. I needed to see where that water was going, how it was behaving in the deeper system. Tomorrow's planned exploration suddenly seemed too far away. The metal grate, I discovered, was secured with a simple padlock, for which I had been given a key as part of my research authorization. I unlocked it, swung the gate open, and stepped into the restricted section, carefully relocking it behind me to prevent any curious tourists from following if they ignored the bad weather and cave closure notices. The passage beyond was immediately different from the tourist-friendly sections, narrower, uneven, with no installed lighting or pathways. My headlamp illuminated raw cave formations, untouched by human development. It was beautiful in its pristine state, exactly the kind of environment I love to study. I moved carefully, placing additional monitoring devices at key junctions and water channels. The farther I went, the more unusual the water behavior became. It wasn't flowing naturally according to gravity. Some streams moved sideways across walls. Others flowed upward in defiance of physical laws. And all of it was moving inward, deeper, as if being drawn to some central point. The rhythmic quality in the water, sounds grew more defined too, no longer just suggestion of pattern. Now it was unmistakably language-like, with distinct phonemes and phrases repeating in sequences that felt meaningful, even if I couldn't understand them. I should have turned back then, should have retreated to my cabin, analyzed my data, approached this scientifically. But I've always been the type of researcher who needs to see for myself, to directly observe phenomena rather than just measure them remotely. So I followed the water, deeper into the cave system than the official maps documented. The passages twisted and turned, sometimes forcing me to crawl through narrow openings where water flowed freely, soaking my coveralls. Throughout it all, I placed monitoring devices, determined to capture whatever anomalous behavior was occurring. After nearly an hour of increasingly difficult progress, I emerged into a chamber that didn't appear on any of the surveys I'd studied. It was large, perhaps 50 feet across, with a ceiling that soared beyond the reach of my headlamp. The walls were covered in a glistening, almost metallic mineral deposit I didn't recognize, catching and reflecting my light in iridescent patterns. But it was the center of the chamber that arrested my attention. There, the various water flows I'd been following converged into a perfectly circular pool about 20 feet in diameter. The surface was unnaturally still, like glass, despite the streams feeding into it from all sides. And the sound, the rhythmic, speech-like patterns, emanated directly from this pool, louder and clearer than anywhere else. It no longer sounded like water at all, but like dozens of voices whispering just below the threshold of comprehension. I approached the edge of the pool, my scientific mind racing with questions. Was this a natural formation? What mineral composition could create such perfect stillness in actively flowing water? What acoustic properties of the chamber could transform the sound of water into something so voice-like? I set up several monitoring devices around the pool, a water testing kit to analyze its chemical composition, a depth gauge to measure its dimensions, a specialized microphone to record the unusual sounds. As I worked, I found myself speaking aloud, narrating my observations and questions as I often did when conducting field research. Extraordinary stillness despite constant inflow. No visible outflow channel. Sound emanating directly from the surface rather than reflecting off it. You see more clearly than most. I nearly fell into the pool of the sound of a human voice responding to my monologue. I spun around, my headlamp beam cutting through the darkness, searching for whoever had spoken. There was no one there. The chamber was empty except for me. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing off the mineral-coated walls. "Is someone there?" "We are here." The voice came from behind me now, from the direction of the pool. I turned slowly, my light falling on the water's surface. It was no longer perfectly still. Ripples moved across it in organized patterns, like vibrations from a speaker. And in those ripples, I could see something, a face, perhaps, though not one I could clearly define. More an impression of features, shifting and reforming in the water's surface. "What are you?" I whispered, my scientific mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The ripples changed, the almost face becoming more defined. "We are the first dwellers," the voice said, emerging directly from the water itself. "The original inhabitants, the ones who were here before air breathers walked the land." I should have been terrified, should have run, but instead, I found myself fascinated. The researcher in me immediately cataloging this as an unprecedented discovery. "Are you some kind of undocumented aquatic life form?" I asked, already reaching for my camera. A sound emerged from the pool, something like laughter, but liquid and unsettling. "We are not creatures of your world, hydrologists. We exist in the spaces between matter and the molecular memory of water. We have always been here, in every ocean, river, raindrop, watching, waiting, remembering." My hands trembled as I set my camera on its tripod, pointing at the pool. "This is impossible," I said, though my eyes and ears told me otherwise. "Water can't speak, can't form consciousness." "Your science is young," the voice replied, its tone almost pitying. "It sees only the physical properties of water, hydrogen and oxygen bound together. It doesn't recognize water's true nature as a universal solvent, the universal memory, the universal conduit between realms." More ripples formed in the pool, creating new patterns that my eyes struggled to interpret. For a moment, I thought I saw not just one face, but many, dozens of them, overlapping, emerging from and submerging back into water in a hypnotic dance. "Water remembers everywhere it has been," the voice continued, now seeming to come from multiple points in the pool simultaneously. "Every ocean it has formed, every cloud it has become, every living thing it has passed through. Water connects all things, all times, all spaces. And some water, special water, like that which flows through this cave system, connects worlds that should remain separate." I had my camera recording now, documenting this impossible conversation. My scientific mind was racing, trying to formulate explanations, hallucinations from unknown gases in the cave, some elaborate hoax, perhaps even some undiscovered property of water in certain mineral-rich environments that could create acoustic anomalies mimicking speech. What worlds? I asked, part of me still treating this as an intellectual exercise, a puzzle to be solved. The ripples intensified, the patterns becoming more complex. There are spaces adjacent to your reality, folded alongside it like pages in a book. In most places, the barrier between these spaces is thick, impermeable. But here in this cave, where our world once directly touched yours, the barrier is thin, and water, the perfect medium, the perfect messenger, can still flow between. I took a step closer to the pool, driven by curiosity. Are you saying you're extraterrestrial? Extra-dimensional? That liquid laughter again. Such limited concepts. We are the original state of consciousness on this planet. Before solid matter. Before air. Before fire. When Earth was primarily water, we were here. When land formed, we retreated into the depths. As air breathers evolved and spread, we became myth, legend, forgotten except in stories of things that lurk beneath dark waters. As it spoke, the water in the pool began to move more actively, no longer just rippling but reaching upward, forming tendrils that rose several inches above the surface before falling back. The movement reminded me of the way certain aquatic predators tested the air above their environments. Why are you revealing yourself to me? I asked, both fascinated and increasingly uneasy. Because you listen to water, the voices replied. Few do anymore. Humans use it, pollute it, redirect it. But they don't listen to what it tells them. You do. You've spent your life trying to understand its language, its patterns, its memory. You're compatible. That last word sent a shiver down my spine. Compatible for what? The water surged upward, forming a column in the center of the pool that rose to about the height of a person. Within that column, I could see the suggestion of a humanoid form, though constantly flowing and reforming. For joining, the voices said, and now they seem to be coming from inside my head as well as from the pool, for becoming a conduit, like the water itself, a bridge between worlds. I took a step back, alarm finally overriding scientific curiosity. I don't understand. We have been isolated too long, the water voice explained, since humans began to build, to develop, to forget their connection to water. The pathways between worlds have narrowed, but now, with the changing climate, with increased rainfall, with the barriers weakening, we can reach through again, can remind humanity of what came before them, what will remain after them. The water column moved toward the edge of the pool, toward me, maintaining its vaguely humanoid shape. But we need help. Interpreters. Those who understand water, who can move freely in the dry world above, who can help us reach others. I continued backing away. I'm a scientist. I observe. I document. I don't join with unknown entities. But you want to understand, the voices said, somehow conveying certainty. You've spent your life trying to understand water's secrets. We are those secrets. We are what you've been searching for without knowing it. The water column stretched further, extending a tendril toward me like an offering hand. Touch it, the voices urged. Experience what water truly is. Know what it knows. See what it has seen. Some small, still rational part of my mind was screaming at me to run, to get as far from this impossible phenomenon as possible. But that part was overwhelmed by the researcher in me, the seeker who had dedicated his life to understanding water in all its forms. I reached out my hand, not quite touching the water tendril, but hovering inches away from it. What will happen? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You will become more than you are. The voices promised. You will understand water from the inside, know its language, share its memory, and you will help us reach others. When the rain falls heavily enough to thin the barriers. I hesitated, poised between fear and fascination, and then my radio crackled to life, making me jump. Dr. Mercer? Come in, Dr. Mercer. It was Ranger Davis, his voice tense with concern. The storm is intensifying. Flash flood warnings have been issued. You need to evacuate the cave system immediately. The sudden intrusion of the outside world broke whatever spell had been holding me. I backed away from the water tendril, which seemed to reach farther toward me, as if reluctant to let me go. I have to leave, I said. addressing the pool. The cave is flooding. It is not flooding, the voice is corrected, a new edge to their tone. It is awakening, opening, becoming once more a proper conduit between worlds. Stay, complete our connection, become our voice in the dry world. I can't, I said, gathering my essential equipment, leaving the monitoring devices in place. I need to process what I've learned, to understand it scientifically. The water column collapsed back into the pool with a splash that echoed through the chamber like a shout of frustration. Then the entire surface of the pool began to churn and surge, the whispered voices rising in volume and intensity. You will return, they called as I headed for the passage that had brought me here. The rain will call you back. The water in your own body will recognize us now, will remember this encounter. You are already partially joined, Dr. Mercer, already becoming a conduit. I fled through the narrow passages, my headlamp bouncing wildly as I scrambled over rocks and through small streams that seemed to be flowing faster, rising higher, reaching for me with liquid fingers I could have sworn moved with purpose rather than according to gravity's laws. Throughout my retreat, the voices followed, carried by the water itself, echoing from every damp surface. We are in every drop, every molecule, every cell of your body. Water remembers, water connects, water returns. By the time I reached the metal grate that separated the restricted section from the tourist area, I was gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I fumbled with the lock, my wet hand slipping on the key. Behind me, I could hear the water rising, flowing faster, those whispering voices growing louder. I finally got the gate open, slipped through, and locked it behind me. Though I knew that would do nothing to stop water, I continued my frantic pace through the tourist section, passing my monitoring equipment, without stopping to retrieve it. When I finally emerged from the cave entrance into the pouring rain, Ranger Davis was waiting, huddled under an inadequate raincoat, his face tight with worry. "Thank God," he said when he saw me. "I was about to come in after you. This storm is much worse than forecast. The whole park is being evacuated." I nodded, unable to speak, the rain drumming against my head and shoulders, suddenly seeming like thousands of tiny fingers touching me, searching me, remembering me, because that was a terrible truth I had realized during my desperate flight through the cave. Water remembers, the water that had been in that pool, that had spoken to me, that almost joined with me. It was now falling from the sky, flowing around my boots, soaking through my clothes to touch my skin. It had said water connects all things. All water is ultimately one water, cycling through streams, oceans, clouds, rain, living bodies, back to the earth, which meant that what dwelled in that underground pool could potentially reach through any water, anywhere. I mumbled some excuse to Davis about my equipment, and needing to analyze my findings, then fled to my cabin. I threw my soaked clothes into a sealed plastic bag, took the shortest shower of my life, then packed my essential belongings and drove away from Robbers Cave State Park in the middle of the night, rain pounding on my windshield like insistent knocking. I left most of my equipment behind, including the camera and monitoring devices that had recorded my encounter in the hidden chamber. Part of me, the scientist, regrets that loss of evidence, but another part, the survivor, is relieved. Some knowledge isn't meant for wider dissemination. I relocated to northern Minnesota, as far from Robbers Cave as I could reasonably move while still pursuing my career. I installed advanced water filtration systems in my home. I switched my research focus from cave hydrology to computational modeling, work I could do without direct contact with natural water sources. But it doesn't matter. I still hear them sometimes in the rain, in running tap water, even in the ice cubes clinking in a glass. That rhythmic, language-like pattern whispers just below the threshold of clear comprehension. And sometimes when I wash my hands or take a shower, I see faces forming in the water droplets. Just for an instant, watching, remembering, waiting. They were right about one thing. Water in my own body recognized them, remembered them. I began to notice changes in myself after that night. An increased sensitivity to humidity, an ability to predict rainfall with uncanny accuracy, dreams of deep, dark waters where ancient consciousnesses swirled and communicated in patterns of current and temperature. I catch myself standing in the rain sometimes, face upturned, listening to what most would perceive as random noise, but what I now recognize as communication. The temptation to answer, to complete the connection they offered, grows stronger during heavy storms. I've managed to resist so far, but I wonder how long I can hold out. Water is patient. Water remembers. Water always finds a way through. Eventually, the rain is falling harder now. I should go check my filters, make sure all the drains are securely covered. But I find myself drawn to the window instead, watching the droplets stream down the glass, forming patterns that seem more deliberate with each passing storm. Would you have touched that water tendril, I wonder? Would your curiosity have overwhelmed your caution, as mine nearly did? I like to think I escaped that night, but in my darkest moments, I fear that escape was just an illusion they permitted, that they're simply taking a slower, more gradual approach to joining with me. After all, my body is mostly water, their kind of water. Water that remembers where it's been, what it's touched, what has touched it. Water that carries whispers from another world, growing louder with each rainfall. Listen carefully the next time it rains. Really listen. You might hear it too. That almost language, that rhythmic pattern that suggests meaning just beyond comprehension. And if you do hear it, whatever you do, don't answer. Don't let it know you're listening. Because water remembers those who hear its voice. And water always, eventually, returns.